to Perspectives, a 30-minute snapshot into the lives of our Port St. Lucie community members and their families. They share their journey, stories, and teachable moments that help to shape their outlook on work, life, and sense of purpose. Today we have Arian Hunter, speaker, writer, career coach, and author of forthcoming book, Dreaming on Purpose. Welcome, Arian Hunter. Great to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here with you today.
All right. So tell us a little bit about your background, family life. What was your journey here?
Wow, okay. So I think the turning point happened when I grew up in the Bronx. I spent the first 10 years of my life in the Bronx and grew up with my family. My mother's from Jamaica, my dad's from Harlem, New York. And it was a beautiful experience. I really had a lot of fun just being in one of the most diverse neighborhoods in New York City. So when I was 10 years old, we actually moved to Long Island. So the suburbs of Long Island, and if you can, I don't know if you've ever been there before.
Westbury. My family lived in Westbury, Long Island. Yes.
So that's Nassau County. If you imagine maybe about another hour and a half east. Imagine going from the diverse neighborhood of the Bronx all the way to the suburbs of Long Island. And it was my first time just really having culture shock, going from one environment to the next. But I really enjoyed having a yard, a backyard, and just, it was a completely new environment. But it was one of the first times where I learned that I was black, and it sounds funny to say that, but I was reminded of my skin color when I, was in classrooms that, where I was the only black girl in the classroom most times.
How early was that?
So, I was around 10 years old.
10 years old,
and I spent, just about all of my upbringing in Long Island. And then we can loop back to that experience in a bit, but I spent most of my upbringing in Long Island, and then I went to Lincoln University, which is an HBCU in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Right.
Yes,
Okay. All right. Yes.
And I studied business administration. It was a time where I really enjoyed business and commerce and really developed a passion for how business is intertwined in all aspects of our lives, and wondered how I can use business as a force for good. So I studied business in Lincoln University, got my bachelor's of science in business administration. And then I went on to grad school, got my MBA, continued my path, in business studies, and the rest is history.
So what was your work journey like while you were doing the schooling? So when you finished your bachelor's, did you start working in corporate America?
Yes. Had to pay back those student loans. So I got a job right out of college, and I think I was in college for about 2 years before I went to grad school. And the reason why I decided to pursue grad school was I wanted to stay competitive. I wanted to have more opportunities, and at the time the MBA was the thing that you do to open more
that's
doors,
what we were told.
right?
So yes,
that was sort of the box that you check, as part of success in this country. And I guess I grew up, kind of wanting to pursue that pathway to success, and sometimes that looks like getting the education, getting the job, settling down, getting that secure paycheck, just really building your foundation and checking those boxes. So that was sort of my path, that I followed. So I got into the workplace, and I started off actually working at a hospital.
Doing what?
So I was in the business intelligence department
at a hospital.
It sounds very fancy.
Please explain that. Business intelligence at a hospital.
Business intelligence. So I was a data analyst, and so what we did was we collected data from the surgical unit at Stony Brook Hospital, and so we used that information to improve the processes at Stony Brook. So we would collect, all sorts of data points around the patients to see what can we do better. So my job was to help collect that information and analyze it and distribute it to the leadership team so we could make new decisions around how we treat our patients. So yeah, so, getting that job after college was like, yes, okay, I'm
All right.
doing something right,
Sounds important.
Yeah. Okay. Like, okay, I feel like I'm in the workforce. So I did that for a couple of years, and then after grad school, I got the itch. I wanted to move to New York City. I was still in Long Island at the time.
Young girl's dream.
Yes.
I remember thinking that. I
city.
wish I could do that. Move
Right.
to the big city.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The glitz, the glamour, the hustle and the bustle. How old was I? I was like in my mid to late 20s, after,
I'm jealous.
after grad school.
Okay. All right.
So, I was like, I want to go to the big city. So I did, and I left for New York City about a year after graduation, maybe a little less than a year. And I moved to Queens. That was my first neighborhood in New York City that I moved to, and was a one-bedroom apartment. And yeah, I had my car at the time, couldn't tell me nothing. I was living the life, and I got a job at a marketing agency this time, and still doing the same thing, like data analysis and collecting data. I worked for JC&Co, which was a French company, but they were headquartered in France, but had an office in the city, and so they mainly dealt with outside billboards. So it was a marketing agency, and so I did data collection around that.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So, take us from after working for the French company.
Yeah.
What happened after that? What were you thinking as far as making the best use of either your grad degree, or what were your interests at the time?
Yeah, so I got to the French company, and my plan was to work my way up. I wanted to be really successful, and at the time, thinking back, I just wanted to work really hard and be noticed and be rewarded for the work that I did. But being the only black woman in the office, that was another place where, again, I was one of the onlys. I think there was probably one other black woman that worked with me. And I did well in the job, but I had a manager that was pretty hard to work with. Talk about toxic managers, and intimidating and bullyish and all of these things. And looking back at it now, I think that there was a lot going on there in the way he treated me, and just he made sure that I knew his power over me, and at the time it was just, I thought that that's just the way it is, you just got to suck it up and do the best you can.
Correct.
So I sucked it up. I worked at that job for about 2 years. It was probably one of the most hardest jobs that I had to work for. I recall a lot of times, leaving the office in tears and just feeling depleted and like, what am I doing wrong,
Right.
And I didn't have a lot of support in terms of other black women to within the office to talk to and understand, like, am I the only one? And it felt like I was going through it on my own, and I noticed, just being one of the only ones treated that way, So I endured that for about 2 years. I moved on. I went to another marketing firm doing similar work, and a small bump in pay, but it was just kind of the same BS, just different companies, same.
Do you feel like, in your experience, especially with the toxic atmosphere and the boss and so on, do you feel that it in any way impacted your earning power, so to speak?
Absolutely.
Okay.
1,000%.
Okay.
In hindsight, I wish that I had advocated more for myself. I wish that I, had mentorship and, coaches, to help me, I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, so.
And there was no one that looked like you either to look to. Okay.
And I didn't see many examples of where I wanted to be, which was moving up in the company. It was, all the companies that I worked for were ran by, hetero white men, in leadership positions that, again, didn't share the same experience or story that I did. So I kind of had to, fend for myself. And this is not at all to, sound like a victim or poor me at all, but I know that my story is not uncommon. I know that there are a lot of women of color and black women who are just, trying to find their way through the workplace.
Hello.
we all can relate, in some way. So anyway, like I said, I switched jobs, and, again, just felt just stagnant, I didn't have a lot of support, but So it came to a point where, after a while of doing, the same thing day in and day out, the burnout, that happened, and
I'm there.
Right.
I'm there.
There's a lot of burnout that happens because you pour so much of yourself into the work, and you try to get, noticed and rewarded, and that's not always the
doesn't
case,
happen,
and you
correct.
don't always have people who will advocate for you.
And you have to pay the bills, make the money, you have to have your
Thank you.
salary. Yes.
Absolutely. You have to have a secure job, you have to have that foundation, all of those things that we were taught, growing up. But when, the stress becomes too much, you have to make a different decision. You have to do something different, otherwise it's going to be more of the same. Right. So I came to sort of a crossroads in my career where it's like I could either keep doing this, keep, pushing, or I can try something new. So I decided to try something new. And I'm not going to say that, I had a eureka moment and said, F it, and just left my job. I wish I could say that, but that is not at all what happened. Okay. I actually got fired. I got let go from my corporate job. And it was because I was so burnt out. It was because my heart wasn't in it. And so that was the time where I was just like, okay, I could get another job, or, so I decided to build something different, and I did. And so I took a little bit of a detour, and I actually, one part that I missed was that at the time when I was working at, the last company I was at, I actually picked up photography, and I needed kind of an outlet, to discover, my creativity, and to, just to follow my passions in a way that I hadn't done before. So I picked up photography. I, would moonlight on the weekends.
And New York is a nice place for photography.
Yes,
so
exactly.
yes.
Also, there's a lot of us, right? There's a lot of photographers in New York City. It's a very saturated, crowded market.
Okay.
But that was my first sort of foray into entrepreneurship. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I just knew that I loved it. I knew that I loved photography. I was good at it, and it just came really natural to me. So at the time when I was let go from my job, I thought, let me see what this photography thing is about. Maybe I can,
You are brave in New York. Okay.
It's just, when you reach a point and that you can try. The thing was that I knew that I was marketable. I knew that I had, built up enough qualifications that if I, photography thing didn't work out, I could go back and get another job, So I said I at least owe it to myself, to try it out. And I did. And that sort of opened the door to not only entrepreneurship, but to coaching, which we'll talk about. But it really sort of opened me up to this world that, wow, you can, follow your interests, you can follow your passions, but not just to do it, but to experience sort of this self-transformation.
Yes.
Because entrepreneurship is not something that I think for a lot of us comes natural to us. So
I'm afraid of it. I mean, I know it's something I want to try at some point, but it's something where it has to evolve in like a side hustle to something that you gain the confidence and experience to find that sweet spot to make it your.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened for me. And like I said, I did it on weekends. At the time, that's what it was, a side hustle. I didn't have the language for what it was, but I just thought, I just did this thing on the weekends. But now we refer to it as a side hustle. But yeah, absolutely, it's like you take that tiny step into, let's see how this works, and you experiment, and sometimes it opens other doors, and then it pulls you into a different direction. So.
Okay, wonderful. So, how did it pull you into the world of coaching? So, is it career coaching, life coaching? Did you have any mentors getting into that? How did that come about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I did not have a lot of examples of entrepreneurs at the time, but while doing photography, it did light something up in me, and I said, I want to do more of this. And so, as it happens, one of my clients hired me to do headshots for her, and she was a coach. She was starting out as a coach. She started her business. She had a corporate finance background, and she was starting her business as a coach. And so anyway, she hired me. I forget how she found me, but she hired me to do headshots for her, and we got along really great. She has such a great personality. And I asked her, I was like, tell me more about this coach. I've never heard of a career coach, much less a life coach. I'm like, what is that?
Right.
So she told me what she does, and I'm like, you get paid to do this for a living?
They do.
Helping people, and you know. And at the time, it just made a lot of sense for me, because as I was, you know, being a photographer, you know, I also became very aware and self-aware of, you know, just how a lot of people shared my same story in terms of getting, you know, stuck in a job that they didn't really like, and, you know, just having to pay the bills and blah, blah, blah. But something in me told me, like, there's something more out there, you know, we really shouldn't have to settle, you know. So when she was telling me about coaches and how they work with people to uncover some of these aspects about themselves, I said, that sounds like something that I can really get behind, you know. And in a lot of ways, I was kind of doing it unofficially too. So, so she told me about her work, and you know, because I'm me, I did a ton of research about the coaching profession. I think at the time, this was back in maybe 2010, 2011.
Okay.
It was sort of a new profession. It was growing. It was like maybe $1 million, you know, industry at the time.
And there are some certifications, some trainings that you can do, like John Maxwell, if you're interested in leadership, and you know, some sort of the life coaching when it comes to that. And
absolutely, there's training programs out there, and that's the research that I did. And you know, I thought about, wow, you know, maybe I can really train myself in the methodology of it. So I found this training school, coach training school, that was based out of New Jersey, and and it just really connected and aligned with how I wanted to learn this industry, and I enrolled, you know, so I did
online.
It was both. It was both. It was mostly in person, but we also had virtual trainings as well.
Good, because you do need that human interaction for coaching. Right.
Exactly. And you know, I learned the science and the art, you know, behind like working with people, asking the right questions. You know, it's you know really about helping people to you know unlock how they can do things for themselves and not doing it for them, you know? And so it's not just about raw motivation. You can do it. It's a very small piece of it, but you know, but coaches have a certain, you know, approach and methodology to working with people to get the best out of them or get the most out of them. So anyway, I took that training, and that sort of, you know, detoured me again from photography into the world of coaching, and I've been doing that ever since like 2011.
Very nice. I wanted to go back and get some examples of some of the events that you've been invited to speak at, whether it's career coaching, life coaching. Give us maybe like 2 nuggets from those.
Absolutely. So let's see. This year alone, I've been getting a lot of opportunities to speak around personal branding, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I think personal branding is really, when you talk about it in the context of your career, it's, in my opinion, one of the most underrated aspects of your career that people often overlook. So,
but it's the crux of everything,
the crux of it.
All your opportunities.
Absolutely foundational to your direction in your career, how you make decisions, how you brand yourself and what you're recognized for in terms of your thought leadership and your expertise. We went through, you know, a pandemic, obviously, in the last 2 years, right? And a lot of people, you know, got laid off, and you know, their careers were completely upended, and you know, in addition to all aspects of our lives, you know. And so that's something that you can't control. You can't control the market. It's going to do what it does, right? But your personal brand is something that sticks with you no matter what, you know. So it is something that you, I believe, it evolves with you over time. I feel like for me, my personal brand is completely different from day one starting out to today, you know. And the more you accrue more skills and you build out your, you know, your leadership and the things that you believe in and that you talk about in your work, it's the thing that makes you stand out, right? So I talked about last time, as a photographer in New York City, there's so many photographers out there. How do you stand out, right? And after, when I'm kind of jumping around here, but after I left photography, one of the things that I learned about myself in that period is that when people hired me to do photography for them, they weren't hiring me because I could take pretty pictures. That was part of it. But they hired me for me. They hired me for the experience of working with me. How was I with them? How was I able to make them comfortable in front of the camera? Things like that.
Right.
So I was able to leverage that and utilize that as a coach because I had that experience working with people, allowing them to be comfortable, around me. Because coaching, a big part of that is trust. You have to be able to trust the person to be able to open up and talk about your dreams and your goals and things like that, and even your flaws and your fears, right? So going back to personal branding, really honing in on what is the thing that you do really well, taking ownership of that. I'm an introvert. I work with introverts a lot, and sometimes we, it's an aspect of ourselves that we tend to overlook or downplay. But introverts are great listeners. They, communicate really well, especially in one-on-one settings. So how can you leverage that, right? How can you use that as part of your career? What are some opportunities you can really use to hone that and develop that, So it's really being, self-aware of what are the things that you do really well, what are your strengths, what do you bring to the table, and that's why people hire you. That's why your brand is always going to stand the test of time, right? Okay. So these are some of the aspects that I talk about when it comes to personal branding and things like that. But
so how do they find you for the personal branding? So if I was to say, okay, I want to hire you, how do we find you to be able to?
So. The longer you do something is the more you get known for what you do. When I started out as a coach, I was very consistent about putting my messaging out there about what I do. And it's not about, hey, look at me, I'm a coach, this is what I do. It's about bringing value to your audience.
Right.
So if you do that consistently over time, you stay true to your messaging and you give value and people come to know you and recognize you for your expertise, you get to a point where people just know you for what you do and they think about you like, oh, I need a speaker to talk about the Great Resignation. That's something that's been happening in the job market. And conference organizers would search online, career coach or LinkedIn.
Right, that's a big one. Big networking tool.
I highly recommend everyone have a LinkedIn presence.
I am trying to increase my LinkedIn presence, definitely.
Crucial. But that's how they found me.
Okay.
They'll do a search, and because I've been active over the years, I come up much higher in search results. So that's how you can be strategic about being known for what you do.
Okay. So after a while of doing the coaching and learning what you can learn about the industry, having combined some of that initially with photography, what else have you set about? I mean, we mentioned, right? You're an author. So how did you come up with deciding what you wanted to share and why? And what can we expect from your upcoming book?
So I began writing my book, Dreaming on Purpose, which I'm really excited about. I began writing it about 3 years ago, so it was right before the pandemic. And again, going back to your personal brand, I actually had a publisher reach out to me on LinkedIn and ask, would I be interested in writing a book one day? They were very, they didn't pressure me or anything like that, but they saw my profile, really resonated with my message and reached out and said, hey, would you be interested in writing a book? And so at the time, I was like, yes, absolutely. I knew that at some point in my career, I wanted to write a book, just not right then and there.
Okay.
But I think that the opportunity came much sooner than I guess I was ready for, but I stayed open to it and I was like, okay, I guess I'm writing this book. So at the time, it made the most sense for me to just talk about my experiences as a career coach, talk about, the mission that I believe in, which is, having work that fulfills you and doing work that you feel is purposeful and that you're passionate about. And it's something that I've dedicated my work to. So it made sense to do that. And it was a very sort of generalized context. And then the pandemic happened, and then George Floyd happened, and then BLM happened, and then the world got upside down.
Oh yeah. A lot happened.
And so it was a time where I really had to reevaluate and reassess, okay, what is it that I want my book to say, you know? And it wasn't just about live your dreams, but it was about, really connecting with you know, being a Black woman, you know, developing my career as a Black woman, the challenges inherently that come up in racism, you know, systemic oppression, like all of these things that were brought to light and that we were now talking about. And I said, you know, if I'm going to write this book, I want to tell my story and I want to be real about it. If I can't do that, I'm not writing this book.
Right.
So essentially, I repositioned myself and I sort of, you know, made this book about, you know, a manifesto for Black women taking the leap in the workplace, dreaming on purpose, you know, and really centering joy and fulfillment as part of their career path as opposed to survival. You know, so I really want us to thrive. I really want us to, you know, grab onto opportunities and no longer settle. Before the...
I love that. No longer settle.
No longer settle.
Powerful.
We're
Powerful
not doing
stuff.
that anymore. We're leaving that, you know, pre-pandemic, we're leaving that behind. And as we pave this, you know, path forward, I want us to really re-examine, you know, what are some of the beliefs that we've adopted about work? What's our relationship to work in terms of, you know, working for a paycheck versus, you know, actually aligning your passions and your interests with the work that you do and getting paid for it.
All of this is in this book?
Yeah.
Okay, so where do we find this book, ladies and gentlemen? We need to find this book, Dreaming on Purpose.
It is
the
coming.
title alone is powerful, so you have to let us know where we can find it,
you.
post it, so that we all go and buy it, okay?
Absolutely.
All right,
Y'all
continue.
will be the first to know, trust me, but I want to put this book in the hands of as many Black women as possible. And of course, this is this is a book that anyone can read, but I'm writing it for us.
Right.
You know, I'm writing it for us. So it's an opportunity for us to really just re-examine our relationship to work and carve a new pathway forward.
All right, so with all that powerful dialogue that we just had about the book, about the coaching, writing, that sense of purpose, one final nugget, if you will, for us and our viewers. If you were to leave us with something that you've learned from this journey, you know, that you have picked up, that you believe in, you said you have a strong sense of purpose and passion for what it is that you speak about, what you share in your book. For those of us that live the struggle as women, as independent women, powerful forces, what would you share with us so that we don't give up, we don't settle, and we don't get so frustrated understanding that we have to have that job, right? You have to have that main job, but that we're not afraid to go after those things that might be our passion, that we're just not yet there, or we're too afraid to just take that leap. What would you say to those females or female viewers? Sorry, men, but you know.
Yeah, absolutely. When you ask that question, I can't help but think about the younger version of myself and kind of what advice I would have for her. And, you know, so much I want to say, but, you know, I'll say this, you know, there's only one you in this universe, you know, and we are all meant to do something purposeful and powerful. And I think it's a waste if we don't take the opportunity to really explore what that is. And I think that when it comes to, when we talk about purpose, it's such a big word. Right?
It is.
And it's so, you know, and it can be very intimidating.
Yes, it is.
It's like, my purpose, and that's okay. That's okay. But I think allowing yourself the space to explore what that is and starting small, you know, it could be, you know, just small steps, you know, find out what would it take to launch that business? What would it take to ask for a raise, increase your earnings? Like, what is the thing that's been holding you back, and really get honest with yourself about it. We didn't talk a lot about fear today, but fear is it's a dream killer. Yes. But it's also part of the journey, you know, and I think making friends with fear, knowing that it is, you know, it is part of the journey. It's something that you can walk alongside.
Adopting the growth mindset.
Yes.
You know, if you don't have that, then you won't understand it is a part of that journey. Yes.
Yes, and not running from it, you know. Our fears are just, you know, it's just here to tell you something like, hey, don't do that, stay safe, you know, and it feels very alluring to stay in our comfort zones, but nothing grows there in your comfort zone. You know, if you want, you know, to have fulfillment, if you want to thrive, you have to be able to do something that scares you. You know, if your dreams are not scary, they're not big enough. You know,
I agree.
So really challenging yourself. I'd also say that, you know, you're not alone. I think a lot of times as women of color, as Black women, we, you know, tend to take on the world, the weight of the world, and do things, you know, on our own, and we're not the best at asking for help. And this is something that I've had to learn how to do better. And I know a lot of us are in that same boat. And I think the more that we normalize our experiences and normalize our stories and share with each other resources and things like that, and lift each other up and really be intentional about building a relationship, we are unstoppable.
Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll leave you all with that.
All right. Well, we will take that. We'll take that with us for the road. Listen, we want to thank you so much here at Perspectives for joining us today. This was a lot of very personal but well-needed dialogue about all of these nuggets along your journey. And, you know, some life advice for young women, for women of all ages, actually, younger, going into the career woman, those of us that are looking to different things but unsure how to go about it. So we really appreciate you, and thank you so much for coming out and speaking with us for this time, and we hope to have you back again. Maybe you can share some more stories with us in the future, but really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me and allowing me to share my story.
Yes, thank you.